Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati. My name is Reverend Connie Simon. Our urban community welcomes all with love, supports learning and spiritual growth, serves our wider community, and works for justice, equity, and inclusion. We're glad you're here with us this morning. If you'd like more information about our community or its work, please email us at member-care@firstuu.com. Our congregational meeting will be held on Sunday, January 31st at 11 a.m. following the service. All members must be registered through Breeze in order to vote at the meeting. If you haven't yet registered, you still have time. Contact Office Administrator Katia Dodd for assistance. Our discussion of widening the circle of concern, the report of the UUA Commission on Institutional Change, continues this week on Wednesday from 7 to 9 with a discussion of the chapter on hospitality and inclusion. These conversations are facilitated by Meredith Plummer, Director of Lifespan Faith Development, and me, Reverend Connie. If you need information on these sessions, need the link for Zoom, or would like a copy of the report, please send an email to member-care@firstuu.com or contact Meredith or me directly. Don't forget that our first church talent show is coming up this week on Saturday, June 23rd at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Zoom. You missed your chance to sign up to be an act, but that doesn't mean that you can't still watch the show. If you'd like more information, please send an email to member-care@firstuu.com or contact Meredith Plummer directly. Though you have broken your vows 1,000 times, come, yet again, come. These words of Rumi speak to the welcome that is at the heart of Unitarian Universalism. We seek to be a home for all who desire our company. We seek to make a welcome for all those in search of our good news. Come, come, little children, teens, young adults, adults and elders. Come, families in great diversity. Come to this loving home and safe harbor, but not to find a place to escape the world. This is a community of engagement and of creativity. We come together to create boldly, dangerously. We must create the beloved community with an awareness of how difficult it is, because it is hard work. It is work that challenges us to bring our whole selves and engage deeply and for the long haul. Our faith, our tradition must call us into community. Our task is to create spaces where we might know and value each other. I am here, like each of you, offering my life story as a gift to Unitarian Universalism, as a gift to you. I offer my story as an African American woman, as a mother of children of color, as a Unitarian Universalist religious educator. When we welcome all our stories into the DNA of our faith, we add value and richness and depth. The inclusion of my story and all your stories expands the vision of who we are and what we can become. To the beloved community, we must know that we care for each other as beloveds, not merely in the abstract, but in the particular and the personal. Wanderer, worshiper, loving of leaving, can we share our stories of pain and joy, memory and hope? Can we be beloved to one another? So often, we are hurt and hurting when we get to the door. We need to forgive ourselves and each other in order to go forward into deeper relationship. Maybe some people cannot even walk through the door until there's first an acknowledgement of the need to say a word of forgiveness. Forgiveness almost at first meeting. Our isolation from one another may be so great, our individual and ancestral pain so deep, as to cry out for reconciliation from the start. And this reconciliation is something else that begins with listening. We must listen to our stories. To reconcile, we need to make peace with the past, not by ignoring it, but by looking at it clearly from many sides, and then to move into renewed relationship. We must gain and grow from our knowledge of each other. We have all experienced times of pain and grief and conflict that have separated us. We all need to be reconciled with something or someone. Here in our faith, we can try to forgive when forgiveness is possible. Our ears open to hear each other's voices. Our eyes ready to see each other clearly. Our hearts enlarged to hold each other's pain and joy. Our arms entwined in embrace as we journey. Don't give up. Don't stop listening to one another.
You can respect differences. Assume or find out. You choose the ending. By Connie Miller. Illustrated by Victoria Asanelli. Scenario number 1. Ben and his family are at a neighborhood cookout. Some kids his age are there. One girl is in a wheelchair. Ben has never met a kid in a wheelchair before. What happens next? If Ben does nothing, turn the page. If Ben says hello to the girl, turn to page 20. Let's turn the page. Ben wants to play basketball with all the kids, but he's not sure about the girl in the wheelchair. Should he ask her or not? He is afraid to talk to someone who looks different. What happens next? If Ben avoids the girl, turn the page. If Ben talks to the girl, turn to page 12. Let's turn the page. Before Ben talks to anyone, the girl wheels up to him. Hi, my name's Aisha. What's yours? Ben says nothing. But Aisha isn't shy. She asks, do you want to play a game? What happens next? If Ben refuses to play, turn the page. If Ben agrees to play, turn to page 16. Let's turn the page. Ben doesn't know what to do. I don't want to play, he replies. Ben walks off to find someone else to play with. A few minutes later, Ben sees Aisha playing basketball with a group of kids. Everyone looks like they are having fun with Aisha. She can do cool spins with her wheelchair. Now, Ben wishes he had not assumed Aisha couldn't play. He should have gotten to know her instead. The end? Let's go back, and let's do another scenario. Scenario number 2. Ben and his family are at a neighborhood cookout. Some kids his age are there. One girl is in a wheelchair. Ben has never met a kid in a wheelchair before. What happens next? If Ben does nothing, turn the page. If Ben says hello to the girl, turn to page 20. Let's turn the page. Ben wants to play basketball with all the kids, but he's not sure about the girl in the wheelchair. Should he ask her or not? He's afraid to talk to someone who looks different. What happens next? If Ben avoids the girl, turn the page. If Ben talks to the girl, turn to page 12. Let's turn the page. Before Ben talks to anyone, the girl wheels up to him. Hi, my name's Aisha. What's yours? Ben says nothing, but Aisha isn't shy. She asks, do you want to play a game? What happens next? If Ben refuses to play, turn the page. If Ben agrees to play, turn to page 16. Let's turn to page 16. Ben does want to play, but he thinks Aisha might be too different. How will it work? What kind of games can you play in your wheelchair? He asks. Aisha's face lights up. I can play almost anything. Want to play basketball? Aisha shows Ben how she plays. At first, Ben is shy to play with her, but he warms up. The kids only have time for one game together. Ben wishes he hadn't made any assumptions. The end? Let's go back and try another scenario. Scenario number 3. Ben and his family are at a neighborhood cookout. Some kids his age are there. One girl is in a wheelchair. Ben has never met a kid in a wheelchair before. What happens next? If Ben does nothing, turn the page. If Ben says hello to the girl, turn to page 20. Let's turn the page. Ben wants to play basketball with all the kids, but he's not sure about the girl in the wheelchair. Should he ask her or not? He's afraid to talk to someone who looks different. What happens next? If Ben avoids the girl, turn the page. If Ben talks to the girl, turn to page 12. Let's turn to page 12. Ben is a little afraid, but he talks to Aisha. I'm Ben, he says softly. Why are you in a wheelchair? I have this chair, Aisha says, because I have a disease that affects my legs. The rest of me works just fine, though. I can show you. Aisha shows Ben how she can play basketball in her wheelchair. Ben thinks it's really cool. The two new friends play basketball together. The end? Let's go back and do one more scenario. Scenario number 4. Ben and his family are at a neighborhood cookout. Some kids his age are there. One girl is in a wheelchair. Ben has never met a kid in a wheelchair before. What happens next? If Ben does nothing, turn the page. If Ben says hello to the girl, turn to page 20. Let's turn to page 20. Ben wonders about Aisha's wheelchair, but he tries not to assume anything about it. He talks to Aisha first. Hi, my name is Ben, he says to the girl. Hi, Ben, she replies. I'm Aisha. Do you want to play basketball? Ben is surprised. You can play basketball in your wheelchair? Aisha laughs. Of course, come on, I'll show you, she says. Soon, the two kids are having fun together. The end. It's clear to me when reading this book that the author wants us to believe that scenario number 4 is the best scenario. But I don't actually think it is. There's a microaggression in scenario number 4 that really irks me. Can you find it? And on that matter, I wonder, which do you think is the best scenario in this book? I wonder, have you ever been in a similar situation to Ben? And how did you respond? I wonder, how can our church be a more welcoming and inclusive place?
Somebody's calling my name. Hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I
Dear one, we have received your letter, and we hate to tell you, not hate so much, but are afraid to say, we cannot grant your requests as stated, but can only remind you of familiar things. First, faith. Faith in yourself and trust in others. We know it can be terrifying to be vulnerable, but only when you share your softest side will we be able to break through. Next, hope. Hope is not an empty fairy tale. It is the true story of all the times human beings like you found a way to create the future, though you didn't know how. And of course, love. Love that demands you cherish all people, not just yourself and safety. Love that is not satisfied until every argument ends abruptly when one child says, "That hurts." There is so much to learn and relearn. The world teaches you to be hard, to negotiate and defend, to avoid giving too much and to the wrong people. There are no wrong people. You also are not wrong. And when you encounter the poor, the broken, the unhoused, the unwelcome, you are looking, if you pay attention, at us. calling to you, calling you to answer your own prayers. If you want to change the world, first be sure you are changing yourself. Be tender, be kind, be at peace, be all the things you wish for. Be your own better self. It isn't without cost, but it will be free. Our flowers this morning are from Mary Mark with the following dedication. On these endless gray, cold days of January, remember the sun, warmth, color, and hope for the future. Spring will come, we will get the vaccine, and life as you know it will return. Please join me in a moment of silent meditation, reflection, and prayer.
Good morning. My name is David Johnson, and this is my board moment. I want to speak to you from the Board of Trustees about the need to develop and install a new lineage of leadership for the future of our church. It is that time of year. We are focused this morning on our UU mission of hospitality and inclusion for marginalized people in our midst, and those in our surrounding community who should be in our midst but aren't. The Commission on Institutional Change asks us to install leadership that is trained in lowering the harm of microaggressions and in restoring right relations in order to make our outreach more welcoming. We have started. If we are to continue to expand the good works that we have started, we need to develop our coming leadership. Your board is turning its attention to the questions of who among us will be our future leaders. We are looking for next year's new board members, for next year's board officers, for our delegates to this year's UUA General Assembly. We want to know who is interested in training for leadership by way of Harvest the Power and the Midwest Leadership School. As a member of your Board of Trustees, I am asking you to look to yourselves to see what leadership roles you would like to be a part of in order to enhance the work of the First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati. We've just finished a year that will go down in our histories as gut-wrenching and unforgettable. The Washington Post chose the words exhausting, lost, chaotic, and one of my personal favorites, dumpster fire. It's easy now that we are in January to be graphically derisive and negative about the happenings of last year. I would like to invite you to take a look at what we have learned about ourselves and what we at First Church have accomplished in this most difficult year. Yes, we have been very physically alone, but we have learned how much we need each other. We have learned how much we have missed seeing our young church families. We have had to carefully plan and organize just to be with each other in the parking lot of the church. We have a new appreciation for being safe with each other and a new definition of the expression essential worker. We have a far clearer understanding of how systemic white supremacy works in our society. The curtain has been pulled aside. I would not say I'm particularly fond of my new perception of ourselves. I used to think that I lived in a fairly progressive world. Today I'm not so sure. But our challenges do seem to be in much closer focus. I hope that proves to be a good thing. Last year our church made some important strides. Last year we worried about our church revenues. And today we've been reassured with a solid budget for this fiscal year. Hopefully we will have a new one coming. We are still learning to broadcast our worship service professionally, and we have seriously updated our technical audio-visual abilities. We have found great relish in the musical talents of our church. We have looked closely at our system of governance and evaluated its effectiveness. In doing so, we are coming to the completion of a rewrite of the bylaws of this congregation. This spring, we will examine those proposals together as a congregation. We have examined our covenant of right relations and our policy of disruptive behavior. Through opening hearts and our focus on widening the circles, we are focusing on being a more hospitable and inclusive institution to people of differing histories. We have accomplished much in this year of difficulties. Now we look to a new year. Still, we have grave challenges. The pandemic is still with us. Systemic white supremacy is still firmly in place. The new year, however, brings hope. This year will be one with multiple effective vaccines for our pandemic, one with a new president who doesn't relish in abusing his enemies, one where First Church can heighten its profile with ever-growing technical abilities and welcoming outreach. In order to go forward, we need the future leadership of those of you with the talent and the desire to serve. If you wish to be considered for church leadership on the board and at UUA, please let your board members know. Thank you.
Giving to First Church is easy. Text the word GIVE to 513-717-7373, or if you have access to our Breeze system, click Give Now. From our website, firstuu.com, click Donate, or you can mail a check to 536 Linton Street, Cincinnati, Ohio 45219. Remember, for the month of January, our Share the Plate collection will go to the Cincinnati Interfaith Worker Center. If you'd like to make sure that your donation gets to CIWC, please indicate that as you donate online or in the memo line on your check. If this is your first time visiting us, please feel free to let the virtual plate pass you by. Your presence is your gift to us. Our offering will now be gratefully received.
There is more lost somewhere. There is more
It's funny how we remember experiences of visiting new places. Once I visited a large UU church where I'd never been before. After the service, they gave me a special mug to hold during coffee hour. It was designed for me to stand out as a visitor, and boy did I ever stand out. I was the only one with the special mug that day, and the only person of color. Everyone was pleasant, but I have to admit, I did feel a little bit like the cute tiger cub in the zoo. It was very uncomfortable. I had a different kind of uncomfortable first visit during one of my drives home to Pennsylvania. Instead of going to a big rest stop, I pulled off in a small town in eastern Ohio to get a cup of coffee and a snack. But when I walked in the gas station, I noticed that folks were looking at me funny. It only took a moment to do a quick scan and figure out that I was the only person of color in the place. And judging by their expressions, they didn't appreciate me stopping by that day. Their facial expressions told me that I was not welcome there. It's entirely possible that there was some other reason why they were all looking at me that way, but we'll never know. I've made several trips home since, and I don't even think about stopping back in that place again. There's a saying that you never get a second chance to make a first impression. That first encounter, first visit, first reaction is permanently etched in your brain. As a visitor, you can't unsee or unfeel your first uncomfortable experience in a place. Is it fair? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It just is. And its effects can be life-altering. When someone comes in the door of First Unitarian Church, do they feel welcomed? I know they'll be greeted by a smiling member of our MVP team. But will they look around and see this as a place where they could belong? Will they fit in? Are there others who sing like them, think like them? Would they feel included in our activities? Is their ethnicity, gender identity, or ability reflected in the demographics of the congregation, in the art on our walls, in our music, or our worship? These are just a few of the questions that they might be asking themselves when they come in. And they're questions we should ask ourselves too, especially when we notice that a visitor doesn't come back a second time. It's kind of like dating. You think that the first date went great, and then you never hear from the other person again. The first time it happens, you might say, oh, well, their loss. But the second or third time, you start to wonder, is it me? What if when visitors come to our church, our home, or our place of business, we simply focus on being hospitable, on showing courtesy, on being kind and generous? And if we see that it isn't working, then turning the reflection inward and searching our own behavior for hints that perhaps our actions aren't as welcoming as we might think they are. This month, as part of our continuing exploration of widening the circle of concern, the report of the Commission on Institutional Change, we're looking at hospitality and inclusion. I'm going to share with you some of the information directly from the report, the Commission's recommendations, and proposed action steps. We'll be talking in depth about this during our conversation this Wednesday at 7 o'clock. If you'd like to receive a free copy of the report or join our monthly discussion group, please let me know. After sharing the report stuff with you, I'm going to share with you 2 pieces on hospitality that hopefully will encourage personal reflection on ways that you as an individual could be more welcoming and inclusive to those you encounter. Let's begin with the report. As background, the Commission noted that Unitarian Universalists continue to repel many of the people who would otherwise provide the resources to fuel our continued growth. Though our predominantly white congregations and organizations may see themselves as welcoming, without particular practices, they continue to mirror the kinds of harms done to people of color and other marginalized groups in our larger society. When we are inhospitable to one group, for example, Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color, others who experience marginalization notice, and our sacred spaces become unwelcoming for them as well. Once equitable practices are introduced, people feel welcome quickly. Engagement with a more diverse Unitarian Universalism does not need to mean marginalization for those who are older, white identified, and economically secure. It does mean the willingness to question assumptions, learn a more inclusive version of history, and adopt new practices. The Commission offers 3 specific recommendations. Number 1, new structures to provide leadership education to UU leaders are needed and should include multicultural hospitality practices as foundational. How do we do this? First, include scholarship funds in education in congregational budgets to allow leaders of color, Indigenous leaders, and others underrepresented in the congregation to attend affinity groups and national meetings, where they'll be more able to connect with others who share their identity and faith. Second, curate and amplify best practices for training ushers and greeters, board members, worship assistants, and other lay leaders in intercultural competency. Third, the Commission suggests that the UUA should contract with identity-based groups such as Drum, Trust, and Equal Access to develop a new certification program for congregations ready and willing to take on the work of being more diverse, inclusive, and equitable. Recommendation number 2. Convening for volunteer leaders at the regional and cluster level should be emphasized to allow support for marginalized groups, including people of color. The Commission notes that for white, able-bodied, straight, cisgendered UUs, this might seem puzzling because they don't understand what a struggle attendance at a congregation can be. When microaggressions and assumptions damage one's sense of belonging. Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color report over and over again being the only or one of the few non-white people in their congregation. This means that opportunities to gather with other UUs who also share more of their life experience become critical to their ability to navigate the difficulties of being in what are often almost all-white congregations. Recommendation number 3, providing resources to promote young adult and youth convenings that include support and caucusing for those with marginalized leadership is essential. Our youth and young adults are often leading the way in the quest for liberation. We need to make sure they have the resources needed to continue this work. Thus, the Commission suggests 3 actions. First, provide funding for an annual convening of youth and young adults of color across Unitarian Universalism. Second, invest in concurrent convenings of white youth and young adults interested in sharpening their skills at supporting and co-journeying with youth and young adults of color and those who are Indigenous. And third, include funding for youth and young adults, Black people, Indigenous people, disabled people, transgender people, people of color, and those of limited financial means to attend associational events such as General Assembly and other gatherings and trainings. This might sound like a lot. It is, and it's important we do this work, not only because we want to survive as a faith community, but also because it's the right thing to do. It's what our Unitarian Universalist theology calls us to do. Here at First Church, at our neighboring congregations at Heritage, St. John's, and the Gathering at Northern Hills, as well as many other congregations across the country, we are doing this work. For us, our Opening Hearts program is designed to help us look inside at our own biases and ways in which we might not be hospitable or inclusive of those who are different from us. Opening Hearts at First Church works to help us eradicate ableism, racism, classism, homophobia, and transphobia, and other biases from our daily behaviors. I encourage you to join us on February 28th to learn more about this important initiative. Pre-COVID, Opening Hearts held 2 workshops on microaggressions, the term coined by psychologist Dr. Daryl Wing Su to refer to those comments or behaviors that other or demean someone because of their culturally marginalized identity. Watch the calendar for a 3rd session that will include more emphasis on role-playing and ways to interrupt microaggressions when we encounter them. This spring, the UU Council of Greater Cincinnati is encouraging all local congregations to enroll together in Beloved Conversations, a program from the Froz Collaborative at Meadville Lombard Theological School. This program is designed for Unitarian Universalists seeking to embody racial justice as a spiritual practice. We'll have more information in the next couple of weeks on how you can register for this thought-provoking program. The Welcome and Membership team here at First Church has been looking at ways to be more welcoming to visitors and help new members find ways to be engaged and connected in the First Church community. They're participating in national and regional conversations with other UU congregations to learn best practices and share those with us here locally. When I came here as your minister, this congregation realized that I would have special needs as a minister of color. You have provided me with the time and the means to attend Finding Our Way Home, the annual gathering of the UU religious professionals of color. I can't begin to tell you how life-affirming and important that experience is to me and how much I look forward to it every year. Finally, our Board of Trustees is seeking to create opportunities for more members of our community, especially youth and young adults and those of limited financial means, to become involved in leadership at First Church. They're also looking to provide scholarships and assistance to those who wish to attend General Assembly, Midwest Leadership School, and other UU events. These are just a few of the things we're doing here at First Church to become more inclusive and welcoming. We're not perfect by any means. Still, we're committed to fulfilling our mission to welcome all with love, support learning and spiritual growth, serve our wider community, and work for justice, equity, and inclusion. This is the work Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was challenging us to do more than 50 years ago. And we're not done yet. There is clearly much more to be done. As we approach Martin Luther King Jr. Day tomorrow, let us recommit ourselves to our mission and to building beloved community for everyone, everywhere.
Let me suggest an image. A long table where people gather to eat. It doesn't have to be fancy with expensive china and chandeliers hanging above. In fact, it's better to be less imposing. Maybe a table outdoors on a warm day. When I was growing up, we often had summer dinners outside. It gets hot in my part of the country, and we didn't have air conditioning. By the approach of evening, the day's heat was still trapped inside the house. But outside, cooling breezes began to set in. My mother and father, sister and I, and my grandmother, who lived upstairs, gathered at the table outside for dinner. Dinners outside were different. The air was fresher. You could breathe deeply. Conversation came more easily, and it often continued after the food was gone. We could relax and be ourselves. Usually, it was just the 5 of us at the table for dinner, but sometimes there were visitors, friends, relatives, someone new to town who my parents thought to invite. To accommodate them, we'd just bring out more tables and set them in a row. On one such occasion, a visiting relative from Germany had his first encounter with watermelon. He exclaimed in surprise, "I have never tasted anything so wet." What I'm envisioning for this imaginary meal is a table with plenty of room. We'll set places for each person we expect to join us. And we'll put out a few extra place settings for others who might arrive unannounced, without an invitation, whose names don't appear on the guest list. Isn't that a little frightening? To include strangers who might be disruptive or dangerous, or might not share our social graces. Well, yeah, it can be uncomfortable, strangers at our table. In our lives today, we're taught to fear strangers. Turn on the TV or the online news or read the paper. Strangers blow up airplanes, compete with us for jobs, steal our money and our identities. We devote considerable energy to protecting ourselves from those who aren't like us. So here we're welcoming them to our table? But this is radical hospitality. Hospitality that returns us to the roots. And the root of hospitality involves not just inviting friends and family, not just those who share our outlook and our values, but also strangers and outcasts. In the Christian story, Jesus was accused of inviting people from the margins to his table. Sinners, tax collectors, those who would not normally be welcomed at a dinner party. In radical hospitality, we greet the stranger. We invite them into our lives, even though it can be uncomfortable. We honor that person's worth and dignity, and our own, as we open ourselves to who they are, what their stories are, and how life looks through their eyes. We stretch ourselves to accommodate the stranger's view of the world. As leaders, we offer hospitality, even to strangers who we do not fully understand. Even the stranger deserves to be heard, to be valued, and receive welcome. Most are unaware of this, but when people were being arrested and sent off to death camps, Hitler intervened to protect his former commanding officer, who was Jewish. People who hate classes of people seem to have little trouble liking and even being friends with members of that class whom they personally know. They say familiarity breeds contempt, and sometimes that's true. My preferred expression is, no man is a hero to his valet. So getting to know one another isn't a universal panacea, but it also reveals connections, and with those connections, empathy, and if one isn't careful, friendship. And Lord knows what happens if our circle of friends gets too wide. Not that this really appears to be much of a danger. I read that we in the United States are increasingly living our lives among people ever more like us. The myth of ours being a classless society is turning out to be less an aspiration and more a lie. In the political realm, people who align with the Democratic Party tend to live together in the same areas, as do those who align with the Republican Party. And how many people of another race live in your neighborhood? I'm not pretending to be above the fray. On Facebook, the vast majority of my some 3,500 odd friends falls roughly into the same part of the political spectrum as I do. I rarely solicit friendship among those with whom I have strong political disagreements and do feel the urge to defriend following certain postings about healthcare or immigration or climate change. I find it extremely hard not to see disagreement here as about people's motives and their character. But, and this is the critical part, I'm willing to forgive those whom I've come to have a relationship with. No, this doesn't mean you have to be friends with every lunatic who appears in front of you. Although there is some kind of but that I hope we find when the impulse to cut off someone arises. It may be necessary, but familiarity is a dangerous thing. But not knowing others is even more dangerous. So what to do about it? Chris Rock once observed that there have been changes in how people relate across race. He said most black people have many white friends, and most white people have one black friend. If you laughed or just chuckled, there's something inside that suggests one really isn't enough. Hitler's one small act was hardly enough, to say the least. But clearly we need to push some boundaries here. A little transgression might be a good thing. In these dangerous times, pushing boundaries might be all that saves us. Knowing the other might reveal all sorts of things about the other, about ourselves.
Hang on to the world as it spins around. Just don't let the spin get you down. Things are moving so fast. Hold on tight and you will last. Keep your self-respect, your only pride. Get yourself and you'll keep your stride. Never mind your fears. Brighter days will soon be here. Take it from me, someday we'll all be free. Keep on walking tall. Hold your head up high. Let your dreams right up to the sky. Sing your greatest song, and you'll keep growing, growing on. Take it from me, someday we'll all be free. Just wait and see, someday we'll all be free. Take it from
We end our service today with the words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his prayer for the church. Lord, we thank you for your church, founded upon your word that challenges us to do more than sing and pray, but go out and work as though the very answer to our prayers depended upon us and not upon you. Help us to realize that humanity was created to shine like the stars and live on through all eternity. Keep us, we pray, in perfect peace. Help us walk together, pray together, sing together, and live together until that day when all God's children, black, white, red, brown, and yellow, will rejoice in one common band of humanity in the reign of our Lord and of our God, we pray. Amen.